Hi everyone, I'm Sharon and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I'll be creating a winter-themed slimline card that features a huddle of excited penguins getting ready to celebrate and to ring in the new year together in the coolest, iciest, and frostiest place in the whole wide world. The place where these adorable aquatic birds call home, the glorious Antarctic. Without further ado, let us get started with a quick overview of the Lawn Fawn products that I used to create this card. The main images for this card come from the Penguin Party stamp set. I use all the penguins, the igloo, and the signpost. The sleigh, standing penguin, snowballs, and wind gust from Let's Tobaggan Together. I end up only using one of the two penguins from Here We Go A-Waddling. The ice hole, fish, and fishing rod from Beary Happy Holidays. Some trees from Yeti or Not and Winter Village. The wagon from Let's Go Nuts. The solid happy from the Offset Sentiments Christmas stamp set. Oliver's stitched 1, 2, 3s. Everyday sentiment banners. And the stitched hillside borders. Using some Strathmore Bristol Smooth cardstock, I die cut a 3.5 by 8.5 inch front panel using a Hefty Doodle Stitch slimline die. I want to create a gradient sky by having some Peacock Feathers Distress Oxide blend into some shaded Lilac Distress Oxide, which I think is a pretty color combination that's reminiscent of a cold winter sky. The shaded lilac fades into a lighter pink. But after blending on some of the spun sugar, I realized it was just too light, and so I switched to the more vibrant Kitsch Flamingo. To get a smooth and even blend between the three colors, I really take my time blending back and forth between the peacock feathers and the shaded lilac and back to the peacock feathers. Then I blend back and forth between the Kitsch Flamingo and the shaded lilac, and back to the Kitsch Flamingo. The key to an even transition between colors is to massage the colors together with the blending brush so that they begin to blend seamlessly into one another. What should be avoided is having areas of sharp contrast between the colors. For some added sparkle and shine and texture for the nighttime sky, I decide to stencil on some NUVO MOONSTONE Glimmer paste. Using my Ranger palette knife and my Lawn Fawn Starry Sky stencil, I carefully spread the glimmer paste into the crevices of the stencil. To ensure that the stencil does not shift as I'm spreading on the paste, I hold the stencil down in place on the magnetic Wendy Vecchi Make Art station. This NUVO glimmer paste actually glides on very smoothly over the stencil. When I'm done, I gently lift the stencil up and look how pretty it looks. I shift the stencil to the right and continue stenciling in the stars onto the rest of the panel. When I'm finished, I scrape all of the unused paste and place it back into the jar. I'm super happy with how the stars glimmer against this ink blended panel. Next, after loading all of my images into my Misty stamping tool, I ink them up using some Lawn Fawn Jet Black ink, which is safe to use with alcohol markers. I re-ink and re-stamp the images 3 times to get a sharp, crisp set of lines. I use a lot of images on this card, and I stamp out 2 extra penguins and some extra trees that I don't actually end up using on the finished card, but it never hurts to have some extra images on hand. I use my Ohuhu alcohol brush markers to color in my images. For the penguins, I use 3 shades of a cool gray, dark, medium, and light. I go in with the dark, cool gray first to lay down the shadows in the places where they would fall on the critters' bodies, such as the areas under their arms and under their bellies. Then I blend it out with the medium shade and use the lightest shade on the areas of the bodies that are closest to the light source. The areas of the body where the light reflects off of should be in the lightest shade of gray. I take the same coloring approach with the trees, except I only use 2 shades of green, one dark and one light, since the trees are smaller images. I don't have the footage for coloring the igloo, but I use 2 shades of a blue-gray. I color the wagon with 3 light shades of purple to tie the image in with the blended sky. I also add the same shades of purple on the signpost and alternate it with the same 2 shades of green from the trees. Once again, this helps to reinforce the united color palette that I'm striving for on this card. I use the same 2 shades of the blue-gray that I used on the igloo on this sled so that the images also tie in with one another. For the penguin's webbed feet and beaks, I use 2 shades of a brighter orange so that they stand out and so they tie in with the bright orange color of the fish. When I am done coloring, I place the coordinating dies over the images, hold them down using some low-tack washi tape, and then run everything through my die cutting machine. The waddle of penguins in this card want to make sure the card's recipient has a Happy New Year, so I stamp the word happy onto the signpost. I gently rock the stamp up and down and back and forth from side to side to get a good impression. Next, I work on the sentiment. I stamp the word happy onto some black licorice cardstock using some Versamark watermark ink so that I can heat emboss the sentiment. I gently sprinkle on some Ranger Silver Tinsel embossing powder, pour the excess back into the jar, use my heat tool to melt the powder to reveal a shiny silver sentiment, and use the banner die to die cut the sentiment strip. Now for the fun part of assembling the card. First, I adhere a stitched hillside border die cut from some silver glitter cardstock. Then I adhere a white stitched hillside border on top of it to create the illusion of depth. I also don't want my colored images to have to compete with the bright silver glitter that is in the foreground. It would be too chaotic for a person's eye. So beginning on the left side of the panel, I adhere the igloo in the midground and decide to place the penguin that is ice fishing on the top of the hillside, since I need some height for him to be pulling up his fishing rod, and so he can show the baby penguin all of his catches. I place the bucket of fish on the sled just below, and it is the job of this other penguin to gather all of the fish into this pail for the penguin's New Year's dinner celebration. Moving on to the midground area on the right side of the panel, I have these 2 cute penguins who are having a blast just tossing snowballs in the air and tossing them at each other. I have this bigger penguin in the foreground pulling a wagon full of freshly made snowballs for the anticipated snowball throwing competition, where the penguin who can throw the snowball the farthest distance away is crowned the winner. This is such a fun card, and while the sentiment on this card is short and simple, I do want the sentiment to be the first thing that the card's recipient sees. I don't want the sentiment to be in competition with the card's visuals. I die cut 2 sets of the year 2022 in black licorice and glitter cardstock, and offset the black licorice numbers on top of the silver numbers to create the illusion of shadow. I use the grid on my craft mat to help me align and center the sentiment on the card front. First, I glue down the number 0 and the second number 2, and then I glue the third number 2 and the first number 2. In doing so, I ensure that I have enough space for the last number and that the spacing between the numbers is even. For the card base, I have a piece of accent opaque 120-pound heavyweight cardstock that I score at the 3.5-inch mark on the 7-inch side. I decide to continue the sentiment on to the inside of the card. I stamp the 5th penguin from the Penguin Party stamp set in some peacock feathers and add some snowflakes in salvaged patina. Then I put some liquid adhesive onto the back of the card front and adhere it to the card base. And here I have it, my finished card. This winter-themed card features a huddle of excited penguins having just the greatest time celebrating the dawn of a new year. They are ringing in the new year in the coolest, iciest, frostiest, and most fun-filled place in the world for these adorable birds to be, their glorious home in the Antarctic. Thank you so much for joining me today in this card making video. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. I hope that you will join me again next time. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.